Hey guys, welcome to the Sweet Tooth Studio. So today I want to get into a little bit of the design for this studio apartment and the setup process and kind of what led us to the decision to make a studio apartment so unique such as this. So when we were first thinking about the design for this studio, it was not always dessert themed. It was actually going to be some just generally some pastel colors. You know, we're thinking kind of like Miami Vice, just not quite as sharp of colors, right? So thinking pastel sorts of colors, trying to think of something that was unique, something that will stand out, look good in pictures, and also something that is a little bit different from other properties in our market. And so the more we kind of went down that path, we just started brainstorming some different ideas. As George and I do, this was kind of like a 10 p.m. to midnight, Eastern time video call online. That's some of our late night, brainstorming sessions. Always get good things out of them. So that video call kind of led us to this dessert theme. And that was partially looking at like I said, other properties in our market and seeing what kind of gap was there. We certainly have not seen any other property that kind of had this dessert theme. We thought it was a really fun idea and we decided to go for it. So as we're researching ideas for all right, what type of, because it's one of those things that once you decide to go in on a pretty unique theme, you kind of have to go all in. We're talking artwork and then accent colors of even picture frames. How does that color, the gold picture frame, that ties into, gold utensils and gold bathroom fixtures for toilet paper holder and hooks for towels and towel bar holders, things like that. So everything kind of ties in together. And we had to think that way so that everything makes sense. And so starting with the dessert theme, looking for artwork, and found, some really, really cool waffle and pancakes and cupcakes. And then we said, okay, great. Those all have great colors. What we normally use for good colors to kind of pop in other Airbnbs are fake plants, right? Greenery. That's a great way to kind of liven up a space and give it some extra color. But in this case, we don't have a single fake plant in here. The reason? Dessert, baby. So instead of using fake plants, we've got fake cupcakes, fake, cheesecake and things like that. So those are like little fake, desserts scattered about on different shelves and other spots where you would normally see maybe a fake plant. And this is also a very small studio apartment. So there's really not a lot of extra floor space for larger fake, olive trees and other grasses and plants and things like that. So this actually worked out really well in that regard. And so as we were researching, some different decor and design items for the dessert theme, we were thinking, okay, we've got one accent wall, which is the wall behind me. Because this is a studio apartment, we did not have we had exactly two options for like an accent wall. And the most prominent being the one behind me. That's the largest blank space, blank slate kind of accent wall. And so we decided to do this kind of sponge, paint style. And so that's what we ended up doing behind me and on another wall directly in front of me. And then the side walls actually have more of a cream color, creamy tan to offset that. So we were looking at all these colors and decided on this pink, this certain shade of pink, nothing super, super bright, but it looks really, really nice given the theme. And so when we're deciding on, all right, what's the coolest looking artwork to go on this wall, something big. And this was truly an 11 p.m. decision on that video call when we were kind of just deep diving this theme. And we were like, all right, Googling, looking on Amazon, looking on other websites for, donut or dessert themed art. Pretty hard to find. And, for like that perfect one that we were looking for, it was one of those things where it's like, I don't know how, to describe it best, but I'll know it when I see it. And then on that video call, there was this span of 10 seconds, I remember, where George and I are bouncing ideas off of each other of just very, very quickly. Okay, it was like reading each other's minds. All right, donut, sprinkles, this, that, and then also trying to tie this into, being close to DC, trying to tie some sort of historical connection into it. And in a span, what felt like 10 seconds, we landed on, oh my God, we don't have to find this. We can make it. And immediately went to ChatGPT, our good friend ChatGPT, and we created this image, put in a few prompts, founding fathers, holding donuts, desserts, and it gave us this image. We tweaked it a couple times. Okay, make the donuts brighter, make the desserts brighter. Okay, we experimented with a couple things as one does. And then we landed on this probably after take 3 or, design change 3 and loved it. And so, went to a local printing company and printed this, found a frame online, hung it on the wall. And I know it's off frame right now, but the other dessert themed artwork that's around this, everything hinged on this piece of art. And I know you can't see around this artwork right now, but this was one of those things where you couldn't do step numbers 2, 3, and 4 before doing step number 1. And so there was a little hold up, a little delay, with this artwork. So we bought this frame online, and then due to the size of the picture, it's a 30 by 40 for the actual picture dimensions. The frame is slightly larger than that. And so due to the size of this, and I didn't, didn't read the fine print when buying this picture frame online. It didn't come with any sort of like glass or acrylic on there. And so because the picture is so big, it needed something to hold it all together. It needed a backing. And so this was, maybe this picture frame would have been, good for some other option. It turned out great, but it just required an extra step, an extra trip to Michael's, and a little expense there. So do some more research, before buying a picture frame. But anyway, because of the location of this picture frame on the wall, we couldn't put the bed fully, we couldn't assemble the bed frame 100% before doing this picture. There are a couple pictures on the left and the right, my left. I couldn't hang the pictures on the wall before those other ones, before hanging this one. So just that little mistake actually delayed this whole thing by a few days. So you know what? Oh well. But during that time, okay, that allowed us to finish a few other things, focus on some other stuff for the business. And you know what? You just got to roll with it. So we're now finally furnished and ready. And so that was, those are kind of the big moments in the design, which was mostly like an 11 p.m. video call. And you know what? Due to the time change, George, 3 hours behind me, that's what we ended up doing. We end up doing a lot of times, right? And so these late night video calls. So the other thing that I wanted to go on is in the startup process, like staging, right? This is an example of, we actually had a rent concession agreed on in our lease with the owner of the property. And so we had a little bit more wiggle room as far as timing, which worked out really well, because what we didn't plan on with this dessert theme, something so unique like this, a number of the items, due to the colors, think kind of a bright blue, powder blue trash can, for the bathroom, a couple things like that. There were one other thing actually. So basically we had some delayed shipping, a little more delayed shipping than we would normally expect, normally receive, let's say from Amazon. So we get so spoiled with Amazon, we're used to, okay, I want a next day or 2 days, and bam, we can get everything up and running in 3 days, right? So that was not quite the case with this one. But so the one other item I could think of off the top of my head, the luggage storage rack, the luggage rack, we chose to do an all white color. Just that decision to do an all white color instead of the standard tan that they offer for this particular brand, that all white color added, I think, an extra 5 days to shipping. So instead of 2 day shipping, it was 7 days. So it's okay. So there were several examples like that. And so naturally that kind of slowed down. There was a period of time where we had all of our painting done. We had bathroom fixtures hung, new mirror. We had anything let's say construction related, TV was mounted, different things like that. But we're flat out waiting on furniture items to arrive. And so ordinarily, the way to get ahead of that, of course, you want to order everything, let's say 2 weeks before the lease begins. In this case, due to some unique circumstances with the owner, we actually didn't know we were signing this lease until maybe 7 days before the lease started. So that really didn't leave us a lot of time, and the property was occupied, so we couldn't get good measurements. And so that's why they actually gave us the rent concession for that first month, which was huge. So even though we had some delays in shipping with some of these items due to the design, that ended up working out fine. So that is the kind of down and dirty for the, design and setup. And so now we're just waiting on pictures, and then we're ready to go. So this was definitely a project, this particular design. This is something that we've never done before. We're very excited to do. And using some first, like, dessert and chat GPT, and just these certain designs for the most part, very, very unique. And so this was something that we couldn't be happier with how it turned out, and I can't wait to share more with you guys. There's going to be more series coming out soon for startup and design and things, so stay tuned for that. All right, thanks.